It's already been 1 year since my husband Jake and I purchased our first home, and in today's video I'll be sharing our top lessons that we've learned, as well as what we still owe and our payoff plan. Hello and welcome to Abundantly Minimal. My name is Sarah and I create videos helping people live their best life with less. Today is all about home ownership, and I'm really excited to share a lot of these lessons and details about our home buying process and the first year of living in our home. Before we begin with the actual lessons learned, I think it's helpful to do a quick review of the specifications. We decided to purchase a condo, 1,400 square feet, for $161,000. We had previously been renting apartments together for 4.5 years before actually making this purchase. We were able to save up enough to put 50% down. Technically speaking, it was better for us for interest rate to not put 50% down, but we made up the difference because we just paid in all of the extra money in our first payment. So I did just want to clarify that. We did sign a 10-year mortgage with the intent of paying it off significantly earlier than that and putting in extra payments as we were able, as well as the interest rate is 4.5%. And our monthly payment is slightly less than $1,500. It breaks down to about $1,000 towards principal and interest, and about $250 for HOA fee, and about $250 for property taxes. We did choose to do a condo rather than a standalone house because, at least in the state of Illinois, it's one of the worst places for property taxes. And so for us, when you factor them in together, it was still cheaper than purchasing a home and paying the property taxes on the actual house. Now that we've gone through some of the different specifications, let's talk through some of these lessons that we learned. Lesson number 1 is something that I'm very, very grateful that we did, and that is to really spend time in apartments before going into the home purchasing process. I think, at least in American culture, there is still some pressure for people to move into a home, or that home ownership is amazing and can solve problems, and the comment that you're throwing money away with rent. And previously I had bought into that last part a little bit, that when you're renting, it was kind of like throwing the money away and you weren't building equity in the property. However, after going through the home purchasing process and being 1 year in, I wouldn't change the time we purchased a home. I think it was a perfect time for us. And I love that we have been able to build up so much equity in the home, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm very grateful that we rented an apartment for 4.5 years. And I think the 3 factors that really make home ownership more costly, if you're not really ready for it, have to do with, number 1, property taxes. And again, at least in the state of Illinois, they're very high. Some homes are paying up to $1,000 a month in property taxes alone. So that's obviously a big expense that you don't think about when you're renting. Another big expense has to do with interest, and I have found it so fascinating to look at the interest payments for a house. And I'll actually take you inside our account just so you can see how it works. But basically, you're paying a much higher percentage of interest up front, and then as you pay off your mortgage, you pay less and less interest each month, and more of that payment goes to principal. So what that means is when you first buy a house, if you're not able to put a lot down, or if you have like a 30-year mortgage or something that's really slow and time consuming, you're going to be paying so much interest anyway. You're losing that money the same way you would be with renting. So I think if you purchase more than you should, or if you can't put much down, or if it's going to be a long mortgage, I don't think it makes sense to purchase a home yet. The other factor too is that then you are responsible for repairs and maintenance around the home, whereas in an apartment you wouldn't have to worry about that. And we wouldn't change a thing because during our 4.5 years in an apartment, we were able to save a lot of money, $80,000 just for home-related expenses. We were still saving for retirement. We were still investing. So it wasn't just laser focus on the home purchase, but it was a priority. And because we were able to do that, it put us in a great position that we were ready to buy a home. But especially after what I know now, I'd really encourage people to make sure they're in a good financial place before going into home ownership. The second lesson that I learned has to do with appliances and appliance repairs versus purchasing a new appliance. This is a minimalism channel. Ideally, I like the idea of being able to use the same items up really until there's no possibility that you can keep using it. And I think with many areas of life, it's a better option to keep using what you have or repair what you have before purchasing the new version. However, unfortunately, I had to kind of learn a tough lesson with the home purchasing process and appliances. In our first year of home ownership, we had 2 appliances, our refrigerator and our microwave. With both of these, starting with the fridge, we had to go through the process of deciding, do you repair it or do you replace it? And to start with the refrigerator, it was overall working great until it wasn't, and it was previously purchased in 2011 by the previous owners. And we thought it made the most sense to repair it. So we got it repaired. It was $279 to repair it, and it was great until it wasn't. 4 months later, it broke again. And once again, we had to question, well, the repair wasn't super effective. It only made it last for another 4 months, and a refrigerator often is around $1,000 to $1,500 depending on what you buy and when. So the second time that it broke, we decided, you know what? We would hate to spend another several $100s for 4 months, rather than purchasing a brand new fridge that we know is going to last for the length of the time that we're here and is covered under warranty. So that was the choice we made, and it's also the choice we made for our microwave. Doing that obviously does mean more costs up front, and it is unfortunately more of a wasteful thing, but that's just one of the tough lessons. It really comes down to thinking big picture. How long are we going to be in this space? And sadly, it is often cheaper to just replace the appliance instead of repair it. So now the mindset we have is definitely, number one, we always try to do whatever we can ourselves to fix small problems, because there are definitely things you can do to help prevent things. But when it's a major problem, really thinking about the big picture and if it makes sense to just do a replacement. The next lesson we learned was just how effective it is to pay your mortgage off early. That was our plan all along. My original plan was to actually pay off our house in 2 years. Now I have changed my mind on that, and I'll explain why. But what I did not realize going into it was that the interest rate started out a lot larger and becomes less over time. Each month about $1,000 goes to principal and interest. So our very first payment, out of that $1,000, $367 were allocated towards interest. When you look towards the very end of paying off the home, for instance, the last year of payments that are programmed on our mortgage website are $50 or less of that money goes towards interest. So you start out paying the highest amount of interest that you would during the entire length of the loan. So for us, it was really important, especially this first year, to really add a lot of extra money towards principal. In doing this, the way the loan is already set up, just from putting in extra payments, we have already saved a total of $14,000 worth of interest that would have happened if we never made early payments. That's huge, especially with teacher salaries, which is what we were working with. So our goal every month was to put whatever extra money was left towards principal. Again, this was not sacrificing our retirement savings, our other investments. None of that. We still had the emergency fund. We left that untouched. But with our everyday, day-to-day expenses, if we had extra to contribute, we did. And what was so interesting to see in the account is, for instance, if we put an extra $1,000 in a certain month, early on in the mortgage, it would cut the total amount of interest on the loan by about half that amount. So basically, it would take $500 off. These days, now that we've put in more extra payment and the amount of interest in our mortgage is currently around $200, now when we put extra in, it reduces it about a fourth. It's not as substantial as it was before, so really it's so important to put that extra principal in as early as possible and really have a strong plan at the beginning. And after learning more about this, we did decide to shift our payment plan a bit for our house. Originally, the goal was to pay it off in 2 years. However, because you're paying so much more of the interest up front, we still have the goal to tackle most of the payments within 2 years. However, we calculated that The way we have it actually set up is the last 2 years of the mortgage, we would only be paying about $90 or less, gradually less each month, towards interest, which means almost everything is going towards principal. It takes some of the incentive out of paying early because the money would be better allocated towards other accounts that have more of a payout. Now, our original reason we wanted to pay off our house in 2 years has to do with financial security. I was a teacher. I now have gone full-time with my 2 online businesses. Reason being, I want to be a stay-at-home mom or work-at-home mom. Because of that, that is like my big motivator. And ideally, I'd love to not have to worry about a mortgage because that takes away $1,000 a month that you're responsible for, which is just extra security in case it is a slower month with the businesses. So that's kind of our why in terms of paying off early. But since we realized that those last 2 years of our loan, we really wouldn't be paying much interest, and our extra money can do better things for us in investment, bulking up our emergency fund even more. Because of that, that's why we've shifted our perspective. So basically, we'll get down to about $23,000 still owed on the property. Currently, we're at about $55,000 owed. So being able to do that is going to allow us to have 2 years where we're not really making the extra payments, but we can still kind of coast and not have to have much money go towards interest. And my last lesson learned from the home purchasing process has to do with the fact that you might go into it thinking you're going to make all these changes right away, but the truth is life is busy. Home ownership is busy, and projects are going to take a lot longer than you think, or it's going to take you a lot longer to actually get around to doing them, and that's okay. Our offer was accepted in October, but we didn't actually move into the home until December because we worked on a lot of different renovations within the house. We did a lot of painting. We installed a few new fixtures, light fixtures, that kind of thing, and we switched out the flooring in the 2 bedrooms. And just doing those projects was very time consuming, and we felt like we were up to the wire before actually moving in. And over time, we have continued to think about different projects that we'd like to do in the home, but it just takes a lot of time. We're 1 year later, and there's projects I thought would have been done by now, but they just haven't been. I have hated our laundry room design for the entire time we've lived here, and just this past week that I'm filming this, I finally got it together and we removed the wallpaper, sanded things down, and gave it a new coat of paint. The process wasn't that time consuming, but life is busy and sometimes you don't get to the projects you want until much later. I still want to create a gallery wall with pictures from our travels, but that wall is still empty and eventually it will happen, but I think it's about just knowing that it doesn't have to all be done right away. And I think the same thing applies if you're thinking about furniture or different decorations. It's exciting to have your first home, and for us at least, it is more space than we've had before, but it's not about rushing out and spending thousands of dollars on furniture to create this perfect picture thing. We thought maybe we would have upgraded our couch, but then we realized our current couch works great. It might not be the most aesthetic piece, but it's comfortable and we don't have to spend the money buying a new one. So I think that's a really important lesson to end with too. It's not about making it look picture perfect right away. That concludes my lessons learned, but I'll link some relevant home-related videos that you might also enjoy if you like this one. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to the channel up here. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.